Today is the start of National Singles Week, and if you're struggling with the single life, Chanel Nicole Scott is here to help. She's a best-selling author, TV host, and queen of relationship talk. I'm honored to speak with the queen of relationship talk. How are you doing?
I am doing well today. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely, absolutely. So National Singles Week is coming up, and I know you are really passionate about celebrating singledom. Talk to me about the pros of being single.
Okay, so what I like to talk about is how to prepare for a relationship while you're single. Because dating seems to be an issue in this day and age. It's very difficult to get into a romantic relationship. So the first thing that I always like to talk about is, before we even think about getting into a relationship, is tapping into purpose. We have to know our assignment. We have to know who we are. And then that way, if a relationship doesn't work, we don't fall apart. We're like, well, I'm cool with me. I like me. I'm content with where I am in my life, so I'm not attaching my value on this relationship, trying to fulfill something that I'm lacking internally.
So it's really being present in a place where you're not seeking out a relationship just to be in one. Is that right?
Right. So often we live vicariously through these relationships because they fulfill something on the inside of us. So when you see people who overstay their welcome, you're like, well, why won't you let that go? Why won't you leave? It's because something on the inside of them is lacking, and they're living vicariously through that relationship based on an illusion of what the potential could be and not what it is in reality.
I love that. That's deep. And I mean, you touched on this, but why do you think some people are afraid of being single?
It has to do with a lack of self-worth and low self-esteem, honestly, and not knowing who they are, like their God-given identity. Like, what is my purpose here on this earth? What have I been called to do? What is my God-given assignment? Because when you tap into that, you're not looking for something outside of yourself. So when someone is mistreating you or mishandling you, you're like, well, okay, this is not for me. It's only when you see people overstay their welcome, it's because they're lacking something on the inside of them.
And what would you suggest to people who may be struggling with that, whether they're single right now and they're pushing towards a relationship for the wrong reasons, or they're afraid of being single?
Yes. The first thing you need to do is ask yourself, what is it that I love doing if money was not an issue? Right? What am I passionate about? What do I find myself gravitating towards? It could be something so small and you don't even realize that you're good at that. Other people recognize it in you before you recognize it. For me, it was writing. For years, people would say, can you help me with this essay? Or can you help my daughter get into college? And I'm like, why are they asking me this? That's because these are people who went to college with me and they recognized the gift early on. I was oblivious to it. It wasn't until I wrote my first book that I was like, oh, girl, you can write, you know?
I love that.
And so I gravitated towards that direction. And then I was also passionate about relationship because of my own inability to sustain and maintain healthy relationship, for sure.
I relate to that. I'm a writer as well. And I mean, it's kind of that passion, I think, that you can hold on to really ground yourself in self-esteem. I want to talk more about your writing. What do you write about? You know, what kind of, do you have a favorite book you've written?
Yeah, so I have a book out. It's called Relationships Matter. And I give very candid scenarios of my own personal experiences. I get very real, very transparent, and I talk about some of the more traumatic relational experiences, but I also give practical principles on how not to make the same mistakes that I made early on in my adult life. So that book is real, it's raw, but you glean practical principles on how not to make the same relational mistakes.
I feel like people appreciate reading realness and rawness because people can relate.
Yes, for sure. One of the things with me and I love talking about relationships, but I'm not one, because it's difficult to be single nowadays. Dating is difficult. Just the whole ideology behind dating now is so different than it was even 10 years ago. So I try to keep it real and try not to just kind of sweep it and disregard, because people want to be in relationship.
Right, true.
You know, so instead of trying to make something pretty that may not be pretty to the next person, I like to talk about ways in which you can improve upon maybe certain things that you need to work on in order to be in a healthy relationship.
This is powerful. Thank you. I mean, if people want to find out more about your book, about you, where can they go?
You can go to relationshipsmatterlive.com and you can purchase the book. You can also go to Books A Million, Barnes and Nobles, and Amazon to purchase the book. We also have, I want to say this, we also have a new card game, a relationship card game that's being released. And we have, it's a 2-deck card game. We deal with navigating past pain and trauma. So when you make a new connection and you want to get to know more about that person and get to know more about their experiences, we formulate questions that you can ask without being too intrusive. And then that way you can learn how to support your person. Maybe if they're triggered, you'll know how to respond better. And the other one is conversation starters for couples on sex and relationships.
Ooh, love it.
Get to know what the person likes. Like, you know, are you into what I'm into? And if you're not into what I'm into, are you willing to learn?
Right. This is great. Super healthy stuff. Thank you so much for joining us. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. Absolutely.
Absolutely.